Je pense sans cesse à toi.
Hello and welcome to The Foretop. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot button topics in food and beverage. I'm your host, Catherine Cole. We're joined in the studios of OPB by three sugar experts for episode 33, and they are going to talk about how they carved out their own unique businesses, how each of them achieved a truly distinctive personal aesthetic, and how they are defending dessert in an era of clean eating. So let's meet our panelists. Jami Curl is the author of Candy is Magic, Real Ingredients, Modern Recipes, and she's also the owner of the nationally acclaimed Quinn Candy. Welcome, Jami.
Hi, Catherine. Thank you for having me.
Michelle Lopez is the mind behind the uber-successful baking and cooking blog, Hummingbird High. So glad you've moved back to Portland, Michelle.
Thanks, Catherine. Thank you for having me today.
And returning panelist Kyra Bussanich is a four-time winner of Cupcake Wars on Food Network, author of the Sweet Cravings Cookbook, and owner of Kyra's Bake Shop. Hi, Kyra.
Hey, Catherine. How are you?
I'm great, now that you guys are all here. Now for our first topic, how to create your own space in the culinary industry. All three of you have gone out on your own and established your very unique culinary businesses, and I'm curious as to how you all got to where you are. Let's start with you, Jami. You were the founder of a beloved Portland institution called Saint Cupcake that was, I think, ahead of the curve on the cupcake trend. You sold that and moved on to start Quinn Candy, an extremely successful candy business that really carved out a new place for candy. Can you talk a little bit about how you identified the niches that you carved out and how you created these businesses?
Sure. Thank you for asking, and thank you for the kind words, because when other people say it, it sounds pretty great. And then when I think it's a different story altogether. Saint Cupcake, I started because at the time in my life, I mean, I am an old timer, I think, in the current food world, because I am 42 years old. I'm a single mom of a 10-year-old kid, and so I have sort of lived a lot of lives. So when I decided to start Saint Cupcake at that time in my life, I was working as a marketer and going to grad school to get my master's in public administration, which is a totally different world than, sugar. So I was baking on the side and making cakes and things like that. And this was in 2004, 2005. So, right around the time Facebook started. So it was a completely different world to start a business then than it is now. And it was something that I never put thought into. A social media campaign and talking to bloggers and finding influencers who would take just the right photo was all stuff that I had to figure out in a traditional marketing sense on my own in terms of sort of how to get people to come to the bakery. And, it was a very different situation, but I had in my heart and soul our recipes and the way that I wanted to bake, and that is sort of what did it. And then years later, I sound very old now. Years and years later, I got bored baking and decided to make candy. And it was obviously a different world then, because then it was Instagram and Facebook and all of these things where you could get sort of an audience right away based on sort of the photos that you were posting and find local people to come in and taste your stuff. So it was a completely different situation. But at the same time, what my focus was, and what my focus always has been, and I think for these two as well, were the ingredients and the recipes and what I was making. And it didn't really ever think, or it didn't cross my mind. I didn't go into it like I'm going to be an entrepreneur. It was, I have something inside of me that is sweet and sugary, and I want to share it with other people.
Well, but with both businesses too, I think you had this vision that was kind of ahead of the curve in that you saw that foods that we traditionally would have thought of as maybe children's foods.
Sure.
You saw these adult flavors that you could bring to cupcakes and, caters to the adult taste.
Sure. It is slightly older, and you can find kids who won't turn down the candy for sure. But the thing is that I think when you're doing something that's truly ingredient driven and not something that you're looking just to find the cheapest thing that you can use to get the end result, when you're looking at real food, for example, to make candy with, all of those flavors generally lend themselves to being something that's real and not blue raspberry, which is, I would consider something that's sort of more kid-like. So the combinations and the way that we combine things to come up with a flavor, we make a caramel that is coffee and orange with smoked salt on it. So that's a little bit different than just sort of a normal sea salt. Thank you. A normal sea salt caramel. But coming up with those things are just things that it's not ever has crossed my mind to be like, what I saw online, or do you know what I saw that someone else did, or do you know what we should make the weirdest thing possible? It's never that. It's always something that comes from something I want to eat, which is, on one hand, a great way to do it because then I'm the only one that we answer to for things that fail. But on the other hand, it's not making a total decision to not cater to what people want.
And Kyra, you had kind of a similar trajectory in that I don't think anyone was doing serious gluten-free baking to the level that you do it when you started your bakery.
And had there been the gluten-free options available now that are available now, I probably would never have started doing this at all. I did, just like Jami said, I did not intend to be an entrepreneur. I didn't want it. In fact, on the first day of pastry school, we had to stand up and introduce ourselves and say what we wanted to do when we were finished. And everybody in my class, there were 34 of us, so 33 people said they wanted to own their own bakery or their own restaurant. Right. And I said, no, I just want a lot of creative freedom to put my mark on things, but I don't want the stress. I don't want to do this on my dime. And of the 34 of us, I have my own place and nobody else does. Half of them are not even in the food industry anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, just like Jami was saying, it started because of what I wanted to eat and, trying to feel, not even thinking about the market for it, but just what I wanted to eat and I wanted to feel good. And maybe there were 2 or 3 other people out there in the Portland area and I was overwhelmed.
But the internal decision to do that and the drive to do it that way, I think is what makes you successful. And obviously, there is a million different ways to define success, and I rarely define success monetarily. And obviously, you and I have never discussed money, so I have no idea the details of that. But I think that the decision to put your heart into it and to make what you're doing is, it's a great way A, to live, and B, to be able to do business, because then it's something that you get out of bed in the morning because you know that you've sort of put yourself into all of it. And obviously, there's a lot of people involved that you can't let down.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jami. And it is, you feel very proud of what you make because you've invested so much of yourself into it. I'm sure, Michelle, you think exactly the same thing when you're baking something.
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to you guys, I didn't start my blog with the goal of I'm going to blog full time. It was just something I wanted to share the baked goods that I was baking. At the time I started my blog, which was in 2011, I was living in a city that was far away from a lot of my friends and my family. And amongst my friends and family, I was always known as the baker. And it was my way of still sharing my recipes with all the people that I loved. And it just picked up. And I do think that people gravitated towards that because I was baking for the people that I loved. And it was stuff that I wanted to bake. And I wasn't trying to chase any trends or anything. So.
And you also kind of occupied an interesting niche in that Hummingbird High, partly that title refers to the fact that you were up at high elevation.
Yes.
And that sort of turned you into this nerdy baker, right, Michelle? You realized, high elevation baking is totally different. So I'm going to just dial down really deep into the subject of baking and learn a lot about it.
Yeah, so some background about my blog. I actually started it when I was living in Denver, Colorado, which is a mile above sea level. And at that altitude, a lot of ingredients change the way that they work. For instance, like leaveners like baking powder and baking soda, they're a lot more efficient because the air pressure is thinner. And I was trying to adjust for that. And I was chronicling that through my blog.
I was just talking to you before we came in here, Michelle, and you used to have a day job, and now you're able to blog full time. I mean, that's really carving out an unusual niche. There are not many people who are able to make a living as a blogger.
Yeah, I'm very lucky in that I'm able to blog full time. I'd say I came into the game at the right time, and I'm sure, Kyra, you touched on this too a little bit. When you opened your gluten-free bakery, you were like one of the first people to do it in Portland. Back in 2011 when I started, the market wasn't as saturated as it is now. I feel like even just scrolling through my Instagram Explore feed, there are so many talented bakers out there, like not even bakers, dessert people, bread people, people who are specialists in whatever baked goods. And back in 2011, it doesn't seem that long ago, but in internet times, that's ages. So I think I just came in at the right time. And I've also avoided a lot of the like kind of like make a quick buck scheme, So there's some things on the internet that'll always do really well, but I feel like the lifespans of those things are really short. So things like unicorn cakes and rainbow bagels.
Don't be hating on my unicorn cakes.
No, they're beautiful, don't get me wrong, but I feel like if you're like concentrating on that one thing, like
Well,
can
and
be.
Kyra, you probably started the unicorn cake.
Yeah, that's
I have been obsessed with unicorns since I was 5 years old, so I would like to claim that I'm at the forefront of that part.
I actually genuinely do think, like, looking at your hair with the sparkly things, it's perfect, and it's so you. But there are some people who are just, like, jumping on the bandwagon and are just making it because they see that that's what does well. But what happens when that doesn't do well anymore? Like, I think people are still gravitating towards, like, the authentic person behind the baked goods, so...
Yeah, what I'm hearing from all three of you is that you're just really being authentic to yourselves. Jami, there's something I've got to ask you about. Sure. I understand that when you launched your cookbook, you actually launched it at Google with creative talks to the Google staff. Tell me about that.
I did. I did, which is an amazing thing. I think that up to that point, I had done a talk at Creative Mornings in it's a gathering of people who are in design and creative jobs, art directors, that kind of thing, and they do it across the globe, and everyone does it sort of on the same day around the same theme. And I did a talk on the concept of going beyond at work and sort of in your life, and that came together and sort of became this sort of ball of like inspiration for people in creative jobs. And some people at Google kind of got a hold of it because there was a video of my talk that went around, and then they had called my publisher and said, if she's coming to California, could she swing by here? Could I? Okay. So I did a talk at the Google office in Venice where it was, it was very, very fun because it's a bunch of people who I don't think normally have someone to come in and like sort of force them to eat candy and then talk about it with her. So from that point of view, it was awesome. And then I taught a class at the main Google campus. Like we made ice cream and lollipops there. So it was very not usual and really super fun. And it was a really great start to the way that I wanted people to view Candy as Magic, because it is a book that teaches you how to make candy, but then there's also sort of all these other ideas that you can get from it. And I think that if you take the food part out of it and use the idea that if you are a creative person and you can come up with your sort of things that you're really into, and then you can figure out what can grow from that as a way to sort of adapt it to like your regular life, that the idea that if you read a book or you see a movie or you talk to someone on the street or you have a question that you don't want to ask because you're embarrassed, but then you realize that you should ask it to sort of, then if you push and push and push and you sort of go beyond what you're used to, then there's so much more that lies beyond that, I guess is the way to say it. And that's what I try to do with candy. And then that's how I sort of adapt it to go to like talk to businesses, is that asking questions and being present and forgetting sort of who you are so that you can try to get into someone else's head to sort of understand more of what they're doing, to figure those things out and adapt them to normal life.
Jami, I have a question for you, too. So as someone who started in a perishable food and then has transitioned to something that is much more shelf-stable and longevity, which I keep thinking if only I had been smarter, I would have done something, not candy, but something else.
Yes.
How do you feel about Quinn as opposed to St. Cupcake?
Everything that you're saying is true. It's easier. Because, the retail bakery of a daily fresh product is a real grind. And there's so much room for creativity, which is awesome about it. But the idea of now having, when I was running St. Cupcake, we had at the time between 35 and 40 employees, depending. And now we have, 6 people who make candy. Mm-hmm. And so it's a completely different, 100% different business, because you can make the candy, allow it to cool or do whatever it needs to do, and then wrap it and package it, and then you can store it for, we have short shelf life because we use real food in the candy, but you can still store it even for a week before you want to ship it to someplace, which is completely different than baking a cookie or making a cake.
And by short shelf life, you don't mean 6 hours.
No, right, exactly.
Significantly longer.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just that it's a really, to be able to ship also is, of course, another thing because, it's
I do.
Yeah, so you have national distribution and you have 6 employees. That's pretty crazy.
We have 6 employees who make candy, and then we have a handful of people who cut and wrap the candy because we don't have any automation. We do everything by hand. Oh my gosh. And then we have a retail store here in Portland in Union Way. And so we have 2 people who work there. So it's more than 6, but 6 people who make the candy. That's right. And then I have a business partner, and she and I do everything. We're self-distributed. We do all of our own marketing. Everything that we do, it's my business partner and myself.
And I want to plug her advent calendars.
Oh my goodness, you guys
They're
are so nice
cute.
to me. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Well, that's a nice segue to our second course, our next topic, because, you're able to make an advent calendar that still ties together the aesthetic that you established from the very beginning with Quinn Candy. So I'm going to start with you, actually, on this topic, Michelle. When I look at your blog, Hummingbird High, what strikes me is it's just so beautiful. Every photo is just so beautifully composed, and there's a through line. I know you've lived all over the country, but there's not a sense that you're moving around. And I've even read your blog post where you say, this actually isn't as perfect as it looks. There are bicycles piled in the corner. There's a leak in the ceiling. But it's very clear that from the very beginning you've had this vision and you have stuck to it. So how were you able to kind of figure out what your vision was going to be and be very firm about sticking with that same aesthetic throughout?
So it's funny that you say that, because to me, it seems like my style has evolved throughout the years. If you go look up my earlier blog post from 2011, 2012, you can see that I'm still... So just to backtrack, I'm completely self-taught. I don't have any real fine art degrees. I picked up a camera one day and just practiced. There was a lot of sitting around, reading food magazines, looking through cookbooks, seeing what I thought was appealing and trying to emulate that myself. So it really is, that's great to me that you think that it's consistent, because to me, I feel like it's still evolving every day. Especially as a photographer, you sort of have to work with what you have. And in a city like Portland, where it rains a lot, the light changes a lot. But a lot of it was just training my eye and seeing and really being inspired by a lot of other people, and trying to figure out what specifically about their work was appealing to me, and learning that sort of visual language that I was really able to hone in and make my own unique style.
And you've won, I've seen that you've won awards for your Instagram feed and for your blog. Obviously, the national media has kind of picked up on your style, and you seem to have just sort of tapped into something. I even saw that your apartment was featured on the Apartment Therapy blog.
Yes.
So there's something about the way you see the world that appeals to other people, clearly.
I think so. Well, also, again, it's very deceptive, because an Instagram frame is only a square, right? So if you guys were actually to come over to my house and see the table that I shot on, which was, I usually shoot on marble, and it's very clean, and I make sure anytime before I start a photo shoot that I clear that space. But everything else around it is actually a hot mess. There will be spilled ingredients. My cat will be trying to get into the frame and eating whatever I'm trying to take a photo of. So I think that's what people are drawn to. Instagram is a little bit of an escape. My life is probably not that different from an Instagram consumer, but when people go on to these social medias, they want something that's different from their everyday life. They want a little bit of an escape, and that's sort of what I'm trying to provide with my aesthetic.
And I love, Kyra, that part of your aesthetic is literally you. You've won Cupcake Wars 4 times. You have this great look that you have this gorgeous red hair with the sparkles that run through it, and it's I feel like it's part not that you look like a pastry, but your personal aesthetic is just so in line with the beautiful pastries that you make.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we really tried to, when we were coming up with the branding, tried to inject a lot of me into it. So our boxes are a dark fuchsia pink. We have a pink wall. I love the sparkles. So anytime you can get pink and sparkly into a pastry, it's a bonus.
Kyra, I actually have a question for you. You mentioned that you developed your branding. What was that process like? And how much of yourself did you inject into that?
Oh my goodness, Michelle. It really was an evolution. So when I first started the business in 2009, we had a different name. So we went through a name change to Kyra's Bake Shop, and I designed the first 4 iterations of our logo, and they were okay. I am not a graphic designer, though, so I was just kind of like,
it's
this'll
hard.
work. And the very first logo I did had 11 colors in it.
Oh my gosh.
Which is way too many in case you're wondering, and it doesn't do well in black and white. So we did hire a firm when we were going to this branding long after we had switched to Kyra's Bake Shop. And they presented us with a whole bunch of options. And I really said I wanted it to feel forward-thinking, so not too vintage, kind of more revolutionary. I wanted it to be very feminine, but not to the point where masculine types would be like, ugh, that's gross. That's a girls only brand. And, so I wanted to go pink, but I didn't want to do a baby pink just because that can be a turnoff for guys. So I wanted something lively and bright. So it was kind of this process of just kind of whittling it down, seeing something and thinking, no, that's not what I want, and then adding more. So when we did this logo, this was a font, but then I had the graphic designer tweak it and add the flourishes at the bottom and extend the top arch of the K. So, trying to balance it out. And then when I saw it in black and white, I thought, I love it. Now let's talk colors.
Well, and Jami, I have your beautiful cookbook in front of me, Candy is Magic. And I love... So there's the whimsical element that your fonts always look like they were kind of written in chalk, like handwritten. But then the photos are very stark and contemporary. They look like broken stained glass, except they're candy, and it looks like it's just been placed on a light box.
Yes.
So you've got this like very sharp contemporary look and then this sort of hand-drawn look. And I just love the way those two counterplay against each other.
Well, thank you. I think that it was the type of thing that when I knew that I wanted to be able to really, really see the candy. And so you're correct. We built this 4-foot by 4-foot light table to put all the candy on so that we could make it as big as or as small as we wanted to do it. And it just, obviously made it where you can see like every part of the candy, because it is true that there's all this bright light coming up from behind, but then it's also lit from the top. So you can see what's in it, but then you can also sort of see the texture in it, which is really nice. So I think that the only way that I can really explain it is that it was not a calculation. I just set out to make a book so that people could see candy the way that I see it.
But to me, it captures kind of what I was saying before, that this is really candy for adults. And so you have this kind of childlike typeface, and yet the photos are just very much geared toward an adult aesthetic, an adult eye.
Yes, and I think that is a good way to sum up me as a human, because I am really goofy, and I do have a lot of whimsy within me, and I am actually drawn to kid stuff a lot more often than I am to adult stuff. And I don't mean that in a weird way. I just mean that I really I like cute things, and I like sweet. I don't watch violent TV and anything like that. I actually don't watch a lot of television at all, because I like to spend my time sort of in a mindset that's a little bit more whimsical and friendly and happy than that. But then I'm pretty shrewd when it comes to business and things like that. So the sort of adult side of needing, running a house and having a kid and running a business and doing all of these things is sort of butted up against the idea that I want everything to be cute. I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully it does.
Well, I mean, for all three of you, I feel like I can go to your if I didn't know who you were or what you did, I could go to your website, see your aesthetic, your logo, your font. I mean, I feel like all of you are saying you didn't really work to get there, but it's so effective.
No.
Okay.
It's not that we didn't work, and I'm going to assume I'm speaking for all of us. It's not that we didn't work to get there, but we all probably, just for myself, I started off one way and then refined as I went. And so everything got better as it went on. I see Michelle is nodding her head.
I have a question for Michelle. In terms of the way that you spend your time to do a typical blog post, how much time is spent on photography and getting the photos right versus the amount of time it took you to sort of bake the cookies?
So for me, and this, because I'm friends with a lot of bloggers and everybody's process is a little bit different, to me, the food is still really important. I'm not going to post a recipe that I am unhappy with, or that even though it looks great, it actually tastes terrible. So that is still the longest part. And then when I first started, and I didn't know that much about photography, it took a really long time to just like play around, move different lighting, and figure out what props worked and what didn't. Now I have the process so well oiled that it probably takes about like 30 minutes to set up a shoot.
Sure.
Which is still a lot of time, but I was when I first started, it was probably like an hour, 2 hours of just trying to figure out what was working and what was not. So.
And then do you think that you like both processes equally, the process or like the art of taking photos and the art of baking, or do you sort of really love the baking and do the photos because you have the blog?
To me, they're sort of inseparable, just because I started seriously baking when I started blogging. So this sounds ridiculous, I'm sorry, but it's really hard for me now to like to think about a dessert and not think about how it's gonna look afterwards. Sure. So yeah, they really go hand in hand these days. So.
And you did bring in a beautiful pie.
It's gorgeous.
In a beautiful wooden pie box.
I can't take credit for that. This is actually a company in Chicago that makes these boxes. So.
Well, I'm thinking maybe it's a good time to take a little break and taste what everyone brought today. I'm so looking forward to this. And all of you brought these, of course, beautifully packaged treats. You wouldn't bring them just, in a paper towel, because you three have these amazing aesthetics. So I'm holding this gorgeous box of Dreams Come True Quinn candies. So I'm going to open one of these and pass this around, and maybe we can all talk about what we brought.
With our mouths full of
candy.
Yeah,
what flavor is the pink, Jami?
That light pink is strawberry. Ooh. So what this is a fruity, chewy candy, 5 ingredients, nothing fake, all natural flavor and all natural color. Like that's pink because of beets, for example. And I think you just took a cherry one. I can't tell for sure. But there's, I like the pineapple coconut. And I that's either pineapple, coconut, or lime. So in the box is a mix of fruit flavors: strawberry, cherry, tangerine, lemon, lime, and pineapple coconut. The pineapple coconut is a little bit like a pina colada, which is very islandy and fresh and delicious. But what I love about these candies is that they make your mouth water when you eat it. And that's what I remember from cherry-flavored candy when I was a kid. And a lot of what we do at Quinn has this sort of element of nostalgia to it. Mm-hmm. And it's not that you necessarily want to go back to your childhood and eat that crappy cherry candy. It's that you want to relive the way you felt then, if that makes sense. And that's sort of what I like to incorporate into recipes that we make, because it is people really, really, they don't know it at first. When you see it in the box, you can't tell it. But once they eat it, they're like, oh, I remember. And that is not a marketing ploy, but just something a gift that I like to be able to provide to people.
And Jami, is it acidity that's making your mouth water?
It is. Yeah, there's a little bit of citric acid in that candy, and that's what does it. Yep.
These are so good because they're
Thank you.
Chewy and soft, but they're not, too soft. It's like the perfect texture as well.
Thank you.
Well, and what
Not
I love,
teeth.
I'm one of those people who can taste different, I don't know if that it's a super taster thing, but if there's artificial flavor, all I can taste is artificial flavor.
Yes.
And this is amazing. The cherry,
thank you.
it doesn't taste like cough syrup. It tastes like actual cherries.
Thank you. That's
so
nice of you to
really,
say.
really good.
Thank you.
Well, my mouth is full of candy. I'm on my second piece. So, Kyra, can you tell us about what you brought today?
Well, I knew that Michelle was bringing pie, so I tried to bring a few more savory items and some of our seasonal stuff. So I have some quiche. I have a pretzel dog, just so we have some salty balance, and then some cookies and muffins, and a pumpkin caramel cupcake.
Not to interrupt you, but I have to say that one of the things that I was so happy to be finished with when I sold St. Cupcake was to not deal with the at-the-counter meltdowns about stuff being sold out. I mean, and it's amazing because you're so thankful and so happy that people are so emotional about a cinnamon roll that you've made.
Yes.
But it is also like, oh my goodness.
There was
Please,
almost a fist fight last week because we had 5 cinnamon rolls left, and it was towards the end of the day, but not the end of the day. And there were 2 people in line, and the first gal was going to pick up 6, but there were only 5. So she asked us to box all 5. And the gal behind her started freaking out that all the cinnamon rolls were going to be gone. And, I'm thinking, but I can't say this because it's not good customer service. I'm thinking, you can always place a special order and then you are guaranteed to get your stuff, or you can come earlier in the day and not at 3:45 p.m.
All the things they want to hear.
Right.
Listen, if you
none of which you
earlier.
can actually say. So, yeah, dealing with the public can be challenging sometimes. But again, like you said, Jamie, I'm so grateful that people do come in.
But I think we know what you need to work on as your boxable thing is some sort of at-home
Frozen,
cinnamon roll kit.
right.
So, Kyra, you brought some silverware, right? Or some
I did,
plasticware.
yes.
I'm just looking at Michelle's pie, and I really just want to stick
Dig in.
a fork or spoon into it.
Yeah.
And what's this pie you brought, Michelle?
This is actually a traditional sweet potato pie, but made with purple sweet potatoes.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so which gives it that vibrant
very beautiful.
color. It's completely natural, by the way.
It looks like it could be made of blackberries. It's so
yeah,
pretty.
yeah.
The purple
It
color.
matches Kyra's packaging.
I was thinking that's a great color.
And people can look on your blog to see a picture of it,
Yeah,
right? Okay.
yeah. The recipe will be live on my blog. So
Because I really want to just destroy the beauty that I'm seeing in front of
no,
me.
dig in.
It doesn't have to be safe. That's a good question also, Michelle. How many of the things do you make that you have to say, don't touch that? Because I assume you don't live alone.
Yeah,
so do you have to put notes on things?
I live
or what
with
do
my
you do?
partner, and he gets very annoyed with me because I will be baking something all day and it smells delicious. But by the time I finished, it's nighttime, and I usually take my photos during the day, and I'm like, don't touch that until I take photos of it, and it frustrates him to no end.
That's really funny. That's yeah. I can imagine.
Again, this is what I love about this is it's not too sweet. You
Yeah.
can definitely taste the sweet potato. It doesn't hit you over the head with the sugar. It's so good.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I love the citrus in that.
Yeah, it's very citrusy. So it's sweet potatoes and orange zest. And actually, since you guys, since you're a super taster, take a guess and see what else is in it.
Is it okay if I double dip my fork?
Absolutely. This pie is for you guys.
And listeners, if you don't know what a super taster is, it's kind of like I feel like perfect pitch with music. It's like being able to identify the ingredients in something without.
I didn't say I was a super taster. I just said I could taste a lot of different flavors.
without knowing what's in there. Or with wine, sometimes it's being able to identify what the wine is, where it came from,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Here's making it very focused.
No pressure.
It's really interesting because the orange is what comes through from the very beginning to the very end, and there's a warm spice in there. I don't know if it's nutmeg or clove or...
Oh, good. There's a little bit of clove and a little bit of nutmeg and cinnamon, and it's basically just orange, those spices, and sweet potato.
It's really nice, and I love the sweet potato-y texture.
Yeah. Well, since you have a pie here made with sweet potato, so that actually makes it quite nutritious, I think we can move on to our third course, Vice and Virtue, defending dessert in an era of clean eating. Today, the trend of clean eating dominates cookbooks and Instagram feeds, and yet at the same time, indulgent desserts and sugary treats are more popular than ever, as evidenced by the success of everyone here today. Kyra, your business exists at the intersection of virtuous and vice-ridden eating because you're a pastry chef, but everything you bake is gluten-free. So I'm curious what your experience has been. Do you get customers in the bakery who are kind of struggling with the tension between eating clean and enjoying sweets? And why do you think both these trends are hot at the same time?
That was like 4 questions in
I know, I'm sorry. I just
do
asked a
my
lot of
best.
questions because I want to eat more.
Yes, go ahead and eat, and I'll try to talk. By the way, Michelle, that box you're digging in everything in there savory on the
yes.
savory side. So the dinner rolls,
I
the pretzel
want
dogs,
right
and the quiche.
Wait, there's rolls in that box? Oh, no. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so everything we make is gluten-free because I get really sick if I eat gluten. So this was mostly just out of a desire for me to feed myself, and then it turned into a business, which was kind of fun. And I don't love the clean eating trend, mostly because I think that there is a lot of fat shaming or sugar shaming that happens along with that. And I don't think food should be shameful. And maybe that's part of why I got into sweets. But I think you should enjoy your food and maybe not eat 5 packages of Oreos in one sit down. But, if you're looking for a cookie, have the best cookie you can find and then go have a salad. or something like, do you know what I mean? Like, just, it's not, this is a treat for a lot of this stuff. It's not all I eat every day. Yes, I do eat treats every day, but I also eat my fair share of vegetables and fruits and protein. But I don't follow a diet unless you consider gluten-free living a diet. And I don't do it for a trend. I do it because I have to.
Well, your point about eating a whole box of Oreos, I think, is a good one. Because,
5 boxes
or
of
5
Oreos.
boxes. Sorry, I was busy focusing on your cupcakes. Is a good one because I think all of you are making quality desserts, and I feel like when you are eating a quality dessert, you're satisfied after one cupcake. Whereas if you buy
3.
buy something that's over-processed, you find that you just keep shoving it in your mouth and you're never satisfied.
Right. And I think, too, I mean, none of us use preservatives. It's all fresh stuff because we want it to taste good and we want it to taste like the ingredients we put in it and not like the preservative or that weird chemically aftertaste.
And I think that saying that, gluten-free and the fact that I use real food in the stuff that I make, we're not saying it's because you're on a diet, you should eat it. That's not the point of it. And I'm not super interested in a life that is about elimination. And I understand a lot of people eliminate foods from their diet for certain sort of medical reasons or because they feel better. But elimination for elimination's sake does not appeal to me. I did a demo at a store out at the Portland airport. And you see all types at the airport. It's a really funny thing that they want you to come and demo candy out there in the first place. But here I am with my table and candy. And a woman comes up and she says to me, "What is this?" And I said, "Well, it's candy. And we don't use any fake ingredients. And we don't have any fake color in it. And it's made from real food. Does it contain sugar?" "Yes, it's candy." And then, it's the, I don't do sugar. And it's like, I could have said, Satan is inside of this candy is how she reacted. Right. She was like, "Oh, I don't do sugar." And it, for whatever reason, you make your own choices about what you do and what you don't do. But the idea of elimination to me is this, is a sort of a placeholder for control.
Yes, exactly, Jami. And I think even one step further, it's not just about elimination, it's about restriction and denial and self-denial. And like you, I am not about that. I'm about being inclusive and happy and indulging and listening to your body. And if you want a piece of candy, eat a piece of candy.
Yes. Amen.
I would also point out that I don't think I've ever met a fat pastry chef. Or an overweight. Look at the three. You all are very fit, slim people. I don't think that, like I was saying before, if you're eating quality desserts, I don't think that it's...
Something happens when you don't deny yourself and you're not trying to restrict your eating. It doesn't feel like this guilty thing that you have to binge on.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so you can
That is a
absolutely-
really true statement, too, especially that you can test on kids. So if you're in a room with kids and there's a baked good or some sort of treat around, you can tell the kids who are 100% deprived at home because they're like, "Let me at it." They just want to eat everything in sight. And the kids who get to have dessert or who are sort of put more in control of their choices are pretty much cool about it because it's not this thing that they feel like they have to just like cram in as much as they can because when they get home, they know it won't be there. So and then I also think that sort of that restriction or the denial leads to some pretty crazy binging, which can't be good.
Which is not healthy either.
Right?
No. Michelle, do you hear from your readers that they kind of struggle with this?
I do occasionally get emails asking, like, how do you have this much sugar around? And I do think you made a really great point earlier, Catherine, about when you're surrounded by this much sugar, you start to be able to discern what is like a quality baked good versus, I don't know, like a supermarket cake or something. So, or Oreos, right? And I find that I no longer have any interest in those baked goods that are just super artificial, obviously not fresh. And yeah, definitely not thinking of it as a treat, but as just something that like is there and is nourishing. As long as you don't have too much of it, you'll end up okay. And that's sort of what I try to express to them. But I feel like there's such a focus on Instagram and on social media about like lifestyle wellness and whatever that means, So I do find a lot of people struggling with this and using that hashtag like healthy living, clean living. But it means such different things to so many people that it's hard to really, I don't know what that hashtag even means. So.
I think it should just be stay off the hard drugs.
Well, I will occasionally use the hashtag healthy-ish because you know, it's gluten-free or it's gluten-free, dairy-free, or it's paleo, but it's still a treat.
So why do you all think, I mean, it is sort of, it's sort of odd that right now it seems like half of society is only eating raw foods and the other half is celebrating cupcakes. I mean, why are these trends both so hot at the same time? Does anyone have any ideas?
I maintain that it sort of comes down to control, something you can control. We can all admit and notice that there are many things going on that nobody likes, that is, all of them are completely out of our control. But there are some things that people can control, and diet is one of them. And even if you don't know it about yourself or can't or aren't aware enough to be able to admit it, being able to control something, it still comes down to that. Even if it's just that, no, I don't, I read about gluten-free in a magazine, and because the majority of people that I know who are gluten-free are doing it by a choice. And it's not that I don't know people who can't eat gluten, because celiac or because they just feel like total crap when they do eat it. But the majority of people that I know are doing it because it's a diet. And diets are just another way to have something that you can control, I think. So, and then the idea of the cupcakes, those are the people who are like, why not? YOLO. That's the, like big time is that it's like, who cares at this point? I'm just going to eat all this because, doesn't matter. But it does. And that's the thing, is that the balance part of it is also a choice, but I don't think that that's the last sort of option that people look at it being a choice. Because it is to balance it.
I agree with you, Jami, but I also think balance can be seen as boring, especially on social media. It's all about the extremism, even in media. It's all about extremism. Balance and people who are centered, that's not the thing that people talk about.
I'm the least interesting person.
So, Kyra, do people come in and talk about how they're on a gluten-free diet to lose weight and then proceed to eat 4 cupcakes?
That's such a good question.
Nobody tells me they're on a... I mean, I've had people ask me questions while I've been out, but people don't come to the bakery and say, oh, I'm on a gluten-free diet to lose weight. There are definitely people who tell me that they're doing it to reduce inflammation for autoimmune issues or to help them sleep better at night because they just feel clearer. But
okay.
That's good. That's good to hear. That makes me feel hopeful.
Yeah.
Well, sadly, we're about to run out of time, so I think we better move on to our dessert course, which I feel kind of silly calling it our dessert course since we've been sitting here eating dessert. Happily eating dessert this whole time. But dessert on our show is where we each go around and share something foodie or beveragey that we've been enjoying this week. I'll just hop in first and tell you that now that we're moving into winter, I am sipping more Amaro in the evenings. And if you're not familiar with it, it's an Italian herbal liqueur. Like many of the most delicious spirits out there, it was originally developed as a curative, so it's very good for you. Some of the most well-known brands are Cynar, Nonino, and Fernet Branca. But what I love most about Amaro is that almost every bottle you find has a really gorgeous label, this fond de sec label art. The one I have right now is called Amaro Sibylla, the one in my liquor cabinet. It has a gorgeous golden blue label. It was recreated in 1868 by the herbalist Girolamo Varnelli, and it is made from the local honey harvested from Monte Sibillini. But I just love looking at the labels. So first of all, I recommend Amaro this time of year. It's very good with dessert, even though it's bitter. And second of all, just go to a really good liquor shop and just admire these gorgeous labels. So that's my recommendation. What did you bring for us, Kyra?
So I don't remember what I said for dessert last time I was on. This may very well be the very same thing I said. But I am kind of obsessing over Malika Amin's book, Sweet, Sugar, Sultry, Spice. And I actually, when I received the book, I told her it was the cookbook I wish I had written because her approach to food is very much like mine. It's the exotic meets the approachable. So she'll make double chocolate cookies but then there's all these different exotic spices in it. So she has some really interesting things. So I'm kind of obsessing on her cookbook right now.
I'm actually tasting exotic spices in these 2 cupcakes.
Yes, you are.
Can you tell me what some of them are?
I think it's the pumpkin. There's cinnamon, cardamom, clove, and I love cardamom.
Yeah, it's so good.
Really good.
How about you, Jami?
Okay, I brought an alternative to blogs and the internet, which is real books. And something that I love, particularly in the last sort of handful of books that I've read, is the idea of food imagery in literature. And I have 3 books. These are all actually children's books that I have read that all have these amazing, little bits of it. But in general, one's called Under the Egg, The War That Saved My Life, and then Ms. Bixby's Last Day. And I have some specific sort of quotes in here that I'll read one of them. But it can be in any book, that the idea that you get to the part where they're talking about food. Even in Hillary Clinton's new book, What Happened, there's this entire part that she talks about just the food that they had on their campaign plane. And when you read about food in that way, where people are talking about how it works in real life instead of sort of in an Instagram photo, then you remember and start to sort of be reconnected to the idea of what food was in the first place, which is sort of this idea of comfort. So this book called The War That Saved My Life, which is a middle grade novel about World War II, and I highly recommend it. And I didn't know that World War II middle grade books, like for 8 to 12-year-olds, is a genre. But then I found this other book that is also about World War II. So anyways, in this book, there are 2 children who are evacuated from London and move to the English countryside because they are afraid that Hitler is going to bomb London. So they move all of the kids out of London and all the adults sort of stay behind. So they go to stay with this woman at home in London. They were terribly neglected and abused. And then they go to this, to the countryside where they're fed and taken care of. And the 2 kids sort of adopt these animals into their lives, a pony named Butter and a cat named Bovril. And Butter was this thing that during World War II was so hard to come by. And it was this prized thing that was super, super rationed. And so there's this sort of animal that means one thing, but is named this thing that is so hard to come by. But what it signifies in the girl's life is like, freedom and something that she gets to care for that she's never had before and something that loves her back, all these things. And then her brother adopts this cat, same thing. He can't sleep he adopts this cat, gets the cat in bed with him and sleeps great every night after that. And the cat is named Bovril, which is this basically like powdered ox bones that they would mix with hot water and then drink because it was very fortifying. And
like collagen.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And so the idea that food can be represented in all these different ways is something that I, love in general, but this week just sort of has come up in all these different areas.
Yeah, it's such a basic thing, but it's so important on so many levels.
Yeah, and you can skip over it when you're reading really easily. But then when you start to see what the images really, really mean and what it signifies, it sort of becomes this whole different thing and a new way of thinking about food in general.
I'm going to get those books for my kids for Christmas.
Oh, they're so good. I have to say that, I do spend a lot of time reading middle grade fiction because it's another sort of passion of mine, but this is one of the best books I have ever read, The War That Saved My Life, just in general. It's so good. And then she just came out with the follow-up to it, which is equally as good, but it's a beautiful book.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Michelle, what did you bring?
So the dessert that I brought was actually my dessert. I've been playing around with purple sweet potatoes a lot in my kitchen. So this is not to be confused with taro or ube, which is the other Asian sweet potato, purple sweet potato purple sweet potatoes are actually their own variety, and not a lot of people know that. And I feel like they're often underlooked in the kitchen, so I just have been trying to incorporate them more in baked goods like this pie. I'm working on a purple sweet potato cheesecake and trying to, because it adds a beautiful, vibrant purple color without any, fake colors or anything, so.
What I know as consumers, we go to the gourmet grocery and we don't really know what the difference is between a sweet potato and a yam, and they all seem the same to us. But to you, there are probably very distinct differences.
Yeah, there's definitely, So I was just reading about this last night, and I probably butchered this, but sweet potatoes are starchier than yams. There's a little bit less sugar content. And then within purple sweet potatoes themselves, the different varieties, there's the American kind and there's the Okinawan kind, which is a region in Japan. They have different sugar contents and different. So whatever variety you end up using can really affect your baked good, depending on like its different makeup, basically. So.
Wow. Well, it's really delicious in the pie. So thanks for bringing that. And thank you to you all. Michelle Lopez of Hummingbird High, if the listeners haven't already figured it out, probably knows more about sort of the insider baking geekiness than anyone else. And it's a beautiful blog to follow. Jami Curl of Quinn Candy, who has a beautiful new cookbook, Candy is Magic. And Kyra Bussanich of Kyra's Bake Shop, also 4-time Cupcake Wars winner. I always love telling people that I know someone who's won Cupcake Wars 4 times. It's like, anyway, today's episode was recorded in the high-fiber, protein-packed city of Portland, Oregon, in the studios of OPB. You can read all about us on the OPB website. Our producer is Alex Ward. Special thanks to OPB sound supervisor Stephen Cray, and our theme music was performed by the incomparable wine importer Kermit Lynch. If you like our James Beard Award-winning show, please help us out. Rate us on iTunes. Subscribe to The Four Top on your favorite podcast app. And please, please, please tell your friends about us. You can tweet us at @4top, all one word, or visit our Facebook page and post your thoughts about the show. We would love to hear from you. Bye-bye now.
Nuit blanche, nuit blanche, nuit blanche.
Go to any party and be the most popular person who can say, I know this person who won Cupcake Wars 4 times.